We've been telling you about the sinking Millennium Tower in downtown San Francisco. How big of a problem is it?
A luxury apartment building in San Francisco is listing towards the Pacific and sinking quickly.
The luxury high-rise in the South of Market area has been sinking and tilting much more than anticipated.
Homeowners in luxury San Francisco high-rise are furious this morning over their sinking investment, you could call it. The 58-story Millennium Tower has reportedly sunk 16 inches since its completion back in 2009.
That's not the craziest part, though. It turns out the city has known about this for years, and no one did anything about it.
This whole thing with the Millennium sinking and tilting has catalyzed this very critical conversation about how well do people really want buildings to perform.
Millennium Tower is a unique problem because it's built on a foundation system, piles that are driven into the soil, essentially they call it to resistance, not to bedrock.
It's a heavy building, but it's designed to meet the specific requirements of the code.
They determined that what they had done was the best way to build that building and that it would be safe. But then something happened.
Dozens of stress gauges dot the walls of the Millennium Tower's basement. They measure in millimeters the slow growth of cracks along the columns that rise up from the building's foundation.
It's 100% for a catastrophic earthquake somewhere in California in 30 years. We won't know exactly what the impact of that is until it happens.
That's a 90% chance it'll be okay. That means there's a 10% chance that maybe it won't.
But I'm more just wondering why the developer isn't willing to spend maybe more money to decrease that chance.
Why should he, I would ask you? The developers don't want to spend any more money than is required. Obviously, the building code says this. We're going to build that. We're not going to make it better. Developers, architects, engineers, public, all rely upon the building code. And the developer says to the engineer and the architect, build me a building, make sure it meets the minimum requirements of the codes.
The building code itself can never be complex enough and detailed enough to deal with a building like the Millennium Tower.
It turns out that the public and the people who live here have a much higher expectation of how buildings are going to perform than the building code actually states. The building code, basically says, the building probably will be okay, probably will survive a great earthquake.
There are going to be surprises, and you just need to go beyond the building code. There is a negotiation between the property owner who wants to get a return and the structural engineer and the building code and the scientists who determine what is safe and what's not safe.
They want to save more money and bring the projects lower and lower, and they miss a lot of things.
The potential of building more buildings is being driven by the market. Frequently you make the wrong decisions if you're only looking about market forces. You find out how the building will perform when the earthquake occurs, and you hope you've thought it through. There's so much chaos in the system, and our understanding about what the earth does is finite.
People are going to continue to say, I want a building that meets the minimum building code requirements.
That can be prohibitively expensive. You wouldn't have any buildings if you wanted to make every building safe.
That's not what people who pay millions of dollars for a unit want. They want a building that's, is robust and resilient. All we can do is raise the minimum building code requirements if that's what the public wants.
There's an ego of the architect who has the tallest building, who designs the tallest building. Businesses like to have the corporate identity. Transamerica building, the Salesforce Tower, the Millennium Tower. I think it is in the human genome to build higher and taller and get up off the ground. Part of the calculation of risk is what is the exposure if there is a failure? And in high-rise buildings, the density of people in those buildings is quite high. So if the building fails, you could have one building fail and have thousands of people perish. Because of the number of people who were in these buildings, we tried to make them as safe as possible. But possible is really determined by what's marketable.
You have a responsibility. you totally have a responsibility for people's life and well-being, and that has to be your main concern, not the money. The question is that all the people living there, is it worth it to keep this building or not? Or just take it down and do it right? I think doing right is much better, safer. As we all know, earthquake is not killing people, buildings are killing people.